Om Asato Ma Sadagamaya Tamaso Maham Jyotir Gamaya Mrityormam Amritam Gamaya Avir Maedhi Rudra Yate Dakshinam Mukham Te Namaham Pahinityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. So my subject this morning is work for work's sake. And we're going to be talking about karma yoga and about spiritualizing everyday life. The word karma comes from a Sanskrit root, means action. But in our context here, the word karma here means more than just the action of clouds floating through the sky. It refers particularly to human action, and in particular to self-conscious, volitional human action. That's karma. And every act of karma, every self-conscious, volitional act of karma leaves in the mind, that is in the psyche, an impression. It's called a samskara. You know, there's two effects of it generally. We've discussed this on other occasions. Two effects of karma. One is external, one is internal, one is roundabout, one is immediate, direct influence, changing your character. The other is delayed, goes roundabout like a boomerang, returns to you. Whenever you do any action, it will leave an impression on your mind that is a memory trace. But in addition to that, it will leave what in Sanskrit is called a samskara. That means it will leave an impression on your character. It will change your character. And every samskara, when you find yourself again in that same situation that you were before, you're in a situation, you're motivated by desire, by raga or dvesha, that is the desire to achieve the object of your satisfaction, to attain the condition of satisfaction. And we can refine it in saying it's not just desire, it's also aversion, because it's the carrot and the stick. That is, if we want something, we want to avoid something, that's our motivation. And with that motivation, we perform the action, and it leaves the impression in the mind. Time passes. When we find ourselves again in a similar situation, that samskara, like a ghost, wants to materialize itself. Desire arises again in the mind to repeat the same action again. That's what habit. That's habit. And so we repeat the action. We get the condition of satisfaction. And the cycle repeats. The habits coalesce in the psyche, reinforce each other. They become samskaras, become the vasanas. The vasanas become deeper. They become addictions. They become compulsion. That's why it's called, what Dr. Sigmund Freud called, repetition compulsion. That's our whole life. Our whole life is nothing, but that's a chain. You see, it's a cycle, and it's a link. It's a link in a chain. And where our whole life is just thousands and thousands of these links, of these chains, and our whole life is just chains. We're bound by karma. This is the bondage. You have to understand the bondage. You have to understand the problem before you can, this morning we're talking about the solution, the problem. Before you can appreciate the solution, you gotta understand the problem. The problem is that we are bound. You have to feel that bondage. You have to feel that compulsion of desire from within. Usually people think desire means, we've discussed this on other occasions, difference between the desire to and the desire from. Desire you're not being compelled by anything outside yourself, but you're being compelled by within. You're being driven from within. And this is the bondage of karma. The goal and purpose of karma yoga is to attain freedom. To attain freedom from desire, freedom from habit, compulsion, addiction, freedom from the vicious circle of karma, freedom from the great wheel of birth and death, because it doesn't end at death. Of course, we were students of the great doctrine of reincarnation. Why are you reborn in every life after life? Your karma. Continue the cycle. The wheel keeps turning. And therefore, karma yoga, goal and purpose of karma yoga is to attain freedom. The purpose of karma yoga is expressed thus: Jivan mukti sukha prapti heto hi janmadharanam. That means the goal and purpose of karma yoga is to obtain living freedom. Not freedom after you die, not freedom in heaven, not liberation after life, but while you are still living, to work through freedom. And this is the goal and the purpose of karma yoga. In order to attain freedom, we do not need to avoid action. You don't need to quit your job. You don't need to leave your family and friends. You don't need to leave the busy marketplace. You don't need to renounce the world and go and live in a quiet, peaceful cave in the Himalayas. All that is unnecessary for the karma yogi. And in fact, Swami Vivekananda says very clearly, do not fly away from the wheels of the world machine. Rather, stand inside it and learn the secret of work. And, well, I'm going to share with you kind of a mundane example. I don't know, it's association I have whenever I hear that phrase, when Vivekananda speaks of the machine and the freedom from work. And I think about an old episode of a Popeye the Sailor Man cartoon. Now, I don't know, many of you maybe are too young to remember Popeye the Sailor Man, but another character in that cartoon was Sweet Pea. And Sweet Pea was a crawling baby, not a toddler. He couldn't walk. But he'd just crawl around, and he wore a nightshirt that trailed behind him by a couple feet, and he'd be into everything. And in one episode, Popeye is at home watching the baby, but he's not doing a very good job. And Sweet Pea crawls out, pushes open the screen door, crawls out the front door, and his nightshirt trailing behind him. He crawls down the steps, crawls down the sidewalk, all the way to the end of the block, crosses the street, crawls across the street, and into the next block, turns, and there's a doorway into a huge factory. He turns and he crawls into the door of the factory. And Popeye, having noticed that he's gone, looks frantically everywhere, sees the doors open, runs outside, runs down to the sidewalk, just in time to see Sweet Pea crawling in that door. And he's, now when you crawl in the door of the factory, This is a vast factory. It's like 2 stories high. It's a huge, vast, enormous Rube Goldberg machine. It has conveyor belts. It has huge turning gear, intermeshing gears. It has wires that are all coming apart and sparking, and it's got buzz saws and hammers, and everything is clicking and everything all together. Here, poor innocent Sweepy, Nitcher trailing behind him, flapping around, crawls up, gets on a conveyor belt. Immediately he's carried deep inside this machine. Popeye arrives at the door, he swings open the door, and he sees what's happened. And of course he has to save the baby. Well, long story short, Sweepy crawls through this whole machine, everything barely missing him. Nothing touches him. Sparks and gears and everything turn, they just barely miss everything. He crawls through, up and over, around this conveyor belt, round and around, down, out through the back door of the factory. Meanwhile, Popeye, of course, is hit by every hammer. He is ground by every gear. He's sparked by every electrical thing, and he's burned and shocked. By the time he stumbles out the back door, he's beaten and bruised. Well, so what's the moral? Well, we can see the moral there. That is the innocent child. That is the anima. That's the self. The selfless person. The selfless actor. The ego, Popeye is the big ego. Of course, he gets beaten and bruised by the world machine. But Sweet Pea, he has no ego. He's just a baby. He's unattached. He's not thinking. He's just innocently walking through the universe. And so somehow he's kind of embodies this ideal. The secret of work, detachment, non-attachment. It's expressed for us in the Bhagavad Gita, very clear, where it's very clearly stated in a famous verse. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma karma palahetur bhur na mate sango sto karmani. That's the verse. Famous verse that tells us how we can become attached. What is the secret of? Well, first, it's going to tell us. Actually, 4 things are we're told. We get 4 lessons in this verse. Karmanyeva adhikaraste. That means you to work alone. You have the right not to the fruits thereof. Be not attached. That's lesson number 3. Be not attached to the fruits of action. Lesson number 4. Be not attached to inaction. That is, don't think that you can just run away somewhere and avoid all the issues by avoiding action. So that you can't do. The first line, of course, requires a lot of commentary. People say, to work alone you have the right not to the fruits thereof. Doesn't that mean I work, don't I deserve my paycheck? Yes, you do. And the purpose this morning is not to give you an exposition of that first line, but we can notice that yes, you do everything as a necessary and sufficient condition. It's necessary for you to work to get your paycheck, but that is not sufficient to guarantee that your paycheck will appear. I mean, the cashier may quit that morning, or the building may burn down, or the business may go out of business, or something. You have no control over that, over the fruit of the action. But for our purposes this morning, we're not analyzing the verse. Rather, we're looking here at the third lesson, which is be not attached to the action. That is the karma. What is the karma? Self-conscious volitional action. Be not attached to the karma. Now, attachment is one of those words that we have to kind of contemplate and think about. The Sanskrit word is sangha. Attachment means it's the foundation. First, it builds up. First is ignorance. That is ajnana. From ajnana comes attachment. From attachment means to what? To people, places, things, material things, to our body, to our mind, to our ego. All that's attachment. Attachment gives rise to desire. And desire gives rise to every conscious, self-conscious volitional action, which is the karma that leaves the impression. So the purpose here is to, how can we become detached? How can we learn to work, do desireless work? That is work that's not motivated by selfish desire, that will leave an impression and thus continue to bind us. How can we get free from the bondage of karma? Well, Swami Vivekananda, if you read the life, Swami Vivekananda, during the wandering years, when he was the sannyasins, before he came to America, traveling through North India, traveling alone, getting the bhiksha from door to door. In the course of his travels, he heard tell of a great saint who lived in North India, lived in a village. It's called Gajipur, which is near to Benares. His name was Pavhari Baba. And Pavhari Baba was a famous saint at that time. And he lived in a small hermitage on the outskirts of that village. And he was known as a great devotee of God, worshiped God with scrupulous care every day. Did great sadhana. The hermitage was not enough for him, though, because within the hermitage, he had dug a cave, and so down is a cave down in the main room of the hermitage. If you visit that place today, very curious to see that cave, you will go over and they will show you the hole, but the cave is filled up. You figure, well, why did they do that? I mean, the whole tourist attraction is to see the cave, right? But somehow they filled up the cave. But the hole is there, and you get the idea. So Pavhari Baba was there, and one of his famous peculiarities was that he was known to do whatever he did, whether it was just washing pots and pans or working in the garden. He did with such scrupulous attention and scrupulous care, the same care that he took for the worship of Raghuvir, that is, of God, in the shrine. And that's why he came to be known as a famous saint, and he became to embody the very teaching that he imparted to Swami Vivekananda, and which Swami Vivekananda often refers to, the advice that he got from Pavhari Baba about how to work with detachment. And the advice was simply to make the end and the means joined into one. That is, to regard the means of work with the same attention and interest and attachment that you have ordinarily for the fruits of the work, for the condition of satisfaction that is the goal for which you are working. This was the advice of Pavhari Baba. Now we can see that first off, immediately, just as students of psychology, we can see that's pretty good advice. Because if we take something like, take a mundane example, like take a, and of course that's apropos this morning, because the Karma Yoga is all about spiritualizing everyday life. Right? We're talking about what everybody does during the day. So let's take like the game of golf. Some people like to play golf. And maybe if you were an absolute beginner at golf, you would go out and after you go out on the golf course, and you're so excited, You get out, you've studied all about the game, and you know about what it means to shoot, your score that you have to achieve at a par, under par, over par, and you look there and you see the flag down further on the fairway, and you begin to, you're preoccupied with your score, with that flag, with making your goal, with fumbling around with your clubs, and you maybe don't play very well that day. And a good golf coach, if you get a coach later on, maybe the first thing he'll tell you is that, look, first thing you have to do is forget about the score. Forget about that flag down what's the next hole and the whole 18 progressions that are in front of you. Forget about all that. And just concentrate, to begin with, on your stance. Concentrate to begin with on your swing and on your technique. And forget about all that stuff. After all, your real goal is not to win this game. Your real goal, if you think about it, is to become a good golfer. And that doesn't depend on this game or the score or anything like that. Doesn't matter if you win or lose, right? It's how you play the game. So you're gonna play the game by okay. Now, as soon as the golfer learns that, immediately we see that the next day when he practices that, immediately first thing, he's going to enjoy his game. He's not all caught up emotionally in his score and worrying about that. He's going to practice. He's practicing his technique, his stance. He's focused. So he's going to enjoy his game much more. And he's going to be much more patient and much more objective. And secondly, of course, you'll find that as time passes, his skill is going to increase a lot. He's going to be much more effective in playing the game. He's improved his technique, and thus he is becoming a better golfer. Now, if you remember in the life of disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, a similar thing happened when several of the direct disciples were on pilgrimage in the foothills of the Himalayas, and they were traveling over hill and dale, and they came, with them was Swami Vivekananda, and several of the other disciples, very young at that time, maybe 18 years old. With them was another Swami, Advaitananda. Well, he was about 65. He was struggling to keep up there with the youngsters. And they wended their way over the hill. They came to the top of a hill, and there they looked down, and far as the eye could see are these long switchbacks, back and forth, going back. That was their goal, their destination. And Swami Advaitananda, he just looked there down at that. He was already tired, and he thought, no way, I can't make it. He said he just sat down on a rock. He told Swami Vivekananda there, he said, brother, he said, you all go on ahead. I can't go any further. Just leave me behind here. And Vivekananda comes back to him and said, brother, look, stand up here. He said, don't look all down. Don't worry about it. Look down there, the hill where we're going. Why don't you just look down at your feet? Can you see your 2 feet? And so Swami Advaitananda, he looked down. You see your left foot and you see your right foot. Now, I want you to do this for me. Put your right foot in front of your left foot. Could you do that? Oh, yes, we do. Now put your left foot in front of your right. Good. Can you do that? Yeah. Just keep doing that. That was the advice. And Swami Advaitananda, he said, well, okay, I'll try it. So like that, he managed to complete that pilgrimage. He had shifted his attention. That is, he had kind of made the end. The advice here is to join the end and the means into one. And so those are the stories. But we can see, but karma yoga is not golf. So let's try to look at the difference here. We get some good psychological advice, that's fine. That'll help us play golf. But let's look closer, what about how to be karma yoga? If you want to call something karma yoga, you have to begin your first idea of before it's karma yoga. That is, it may be unselfish work, it may be helping others, it may be volunteering to help others, it may be working for the welfare of the world, it may be humanitarian service, but it's not proper to call it karma yoga unless you have a prior intention to attain spiritual freedom. That is, the goal of all the yogas is the same, mukti. What is mukti? Spiritual freedom. That's your motive. That's the motive of all yoga. So, in that sense, you see, the golfer, his motive was not to attain spiritual freedom. His motive was to become a better golfer. And what he had done, he had a certain detachment at level 1. At level 2, he still had a motivation. So the first purpose here is to attain freedom, spiritual freedom. And the second prerequisite, see, all the yogas have prerequisites. That's a whole process of assumptions that are made before you engage in these advanced courses. That's why we get up and we talk. We love to think about these things and talk about them and give lectures about them. But actually, the fact is that to actually practice these things requires that you have a whole foundation of other stuff that we don't want to hear about. Right? That's the kindergarten level we don't want to hear about. Now, this level, the most important part of this, we have discussed in great detail on other occasions. It's called doing your dharma. That means karma yoga, when they use the word karma now, they use the word karma and karma yoga is used in the sense of dharma. Dharma. So it's assuming that you're doing your dharma. What is dharma? Dharma, we discussed in great detail, means doing your duty, doing your natural duty. Beginning then with your dharma, you have a desire, independent reason for action. That's the duty. That's your baseline that you're going to begin karma yoga with doing your dharma, which we've discussed in great detail on other occasions, and we ended our discussion on previous occasions with the observation that doing your dharma, that is doing your work here means doing what you're obliged to do, your duty. Doing your work is not enough. Doing your dharma is not enough. To attain spiritual freedom, you have to do your duty for duty's sake. You have to do your dharma for dharma's sake. You have to do your work. It's not enough to do your work, doing what you're obliged to do. You have to do your work for work's sake. And there are many people in the world, most people in the world, do their duty every day. Well, maybe not very well, but I mean, we go to a much higher level, but I mean, people would basically do their duty. That's not enough to attain spirit, but it makes you better and better. Every time you do your duty, you improve your character. You become a better and better person. The more that you do your dharma, the better you become. But now this morning we're talking about doing a work. By work here we mean dharma. Doing your duty for duty's sake. And let's look at that. Let's look at a mundane example, because that's what we're talking about this morning. We're talking about everyday life. Let's talk here about, give you an example of washing your car. Now let's say you're going to wash your car. Now washing your car is already a very good start on karma yoga. You know why? Why? Because you are a property owner. And because you are a householder, a property owner, you have property, namely your car. You have a vehicle, and it's just part of your dharma is to maintain your vehicle, and part of maintaining your vehicle is to wash and keep your vehicle clean. And so washing your car is one of your duties in life. And so when you wash your car, you're doing your duty. Now, as a student of karma yoga, of course, you're a Vedantin, and you want to attain spiritual freedom. And so you're going to, with that clear prior intention in mind, that is to attain spiritual freedom, and with the immediate objective here of washing your car, but that is you're going to doing your dharma. You already have a desire independent reason for action. That is to do your duty. And so how to make this into karma? Well, we have to, now let's go back to Pavhari Bhaba's advice. In order to do the duty for duty's sake, what we need to do is we need to practice this technique of what is sometimes called meditation in action. That means we need to focus our attention on the work at hand. Now you say, well, why should I put my attention on this very mundane task? Remember, your goal and purpose is spiritual freedom. Let's imagine a jnani. Let's imagine a person whose mind, the yogis say our mind is like a lake. Let's imagine a perfect yogi whose mind is very calm and placid, like a lake. A lake is like a mirror. And let's say let's say you drive a car up next to that lake. What do you see in the lake? You see a perfect reflection of a car, right? So the purpose here of karma yoga now is going to be to deploy our mind like a mirror. You're going to work and do your work, and throughout this progression of this task, your mind is going to reflect the work at hand. Now the problem is the ego is going to step into the picture. The ego, just as with meditation, as you very well know, you sit down, you have all the greatest and best intentions of the world, and within 2 or 3 seconds, you find yourself imagining we're walking down the street in New York City. That's the ego is impatient, will be impatient with this very mundane task. The ego has other plans and begins to fly away. That's why we have to bring our attention back to reflecting the work at hand. Again, the ego mind will wander. Mind wandering. You're going to want to go. This is a very boring action. You want to think about something. Think about what you're going to do tomorrow. Think about what you did yesterday, past, present. No, the idea is be here now. Bring your mind back to the present. Focus on what you're doing. Make the end, or whatever end you're thinking, bring that end and purpose back to your work. And in so doing, you will you complete your task. Now, what have you done? What have you accomplished? Well, if you have done this, if during that whole progression, maybe 20 minutes, if during that 20 minutes you have really been practicing karma yoga, first place, you're going to be very tired. The second place, but you're going to feel as if you've been working like a master and not like a slave. That's one thing. That's the maxim of karma yoga. Swami Vedarupananda teaches us. Oh my God, I'm going too slow here. maxim here is work like a master, not like a slave. So I say, oh yes, at least what you've done is you've worked through freedom, at least for 20 minutes. You've struggled to be free from desire, from compulsion. Don't let yourself think about the past, the future. Don't let the mind wander away here and there. No, you're going to be free. And what is your free? You've made a free will choice to wash the car, and therefore you will work through freedom for 20 minutes. That's your goal. If you can do that, we're good. Then you've taken a baby step forward in liberating yourself from the compulsive chains of desire. This practice in Buddhism. Now I'm going to do a little comparative religion, which is maybe not a good idea, but we're going to, in Buddhism, this practice is called right mindfulness. And even though Buddhist comes out of a radically different metaphysical framework from the Vedanta philosophy, in this regard, it's going to be a helpful comparison. The Buddhists call this practice right mindfulness, and it's a practice that is maybe most popular and maybe most focused among the Theravada Buddhist tradition, now most in Southeast Asia, Burma, Thailand, where the monks are instructed to practice right mindfulness. That means to eat and to meditate and to do their daily work and to walk, and with a focus of attention on the work at hand, to do their work with a sense of present awareness, whether they're eating or they're walking. The point is being here now, right? Withdrawing your mind. It's just non-attachment. Don't be attached to the past, present, down the past, the present. Why does the mind wander? It's because you want. It all comes back to desire and attachment. So the purpose here of this is practice of right mindfulness. And you can read about it in some detail about a famous book that written by a British admiral, Admiral Shattuck, called The Experiment in Mindfulness. I think it's a very good book because he went and lived there in a Burmese Buddhist monastery long ago. That book was actually published in 1960, but this was long before it became a popular, underwent kind of a lot of the teachings, underwent the dialogic process, and he gives you a lot of fresh, first-hand information about how this was practiced. This practice of right mindfulness is the foundation of all the, if you're interested in martial arts, foundation maybe of all the Oriental martial arts. Certainly some of you know. Japanese tea ceremony, you've read about that. Say guests come to your house and you want to prepare them a cup of tea. And well, that's a very dharmic action. Of course your guests come, of course you're going to prepare them tea. You're not doing it because you love preparing tea. You're doing it because that's your dharma, that's your duty. And because you happily you prepare that. How can now you prepare, but you have to do your duty for duty's sake? It's not enough. Millions and millions of guests, millions of people, and they make millions of cups of tea, but they don't make the duty for the duty's sake. That is, you have to perform the Japanese tea ceremony. I don't mean literally, but I mean you have to have the same spirit. What is the spirit? The spirit is the spirit of immediate presence. That is right mindfulness. That means non-attachment. Your mind cannot be attached. Your mind cannot be attached to people, places, things, and the source of wandering away, and therefore bring the mind back to the present action. What is it? What is it? Why does the mind wander? Well, it's because that's the nature of the ego. That's the ego. The ego is by nature, the essence of the ego. The ego is, what is the ego? It's in single word. The ego is want. Want with a capital W. The ego is desire. And therefore, because you are a jivatman, you are an embodied soul, you want things. You always want. Every minute of your moment of your life, every movement of your body and action is because you need, you want, you need, you hope, you desire. There's some condition of satisfaction that you need to complete and fulfill yourself. And all that is based on attachment. Or attachment to what? It's because you're attached to the body, the mind, and to the intellect, which is the jiva. That's because you are a jiva. Just because you are a jiva, you act. You are attached. By definition, you're attached. And because you are a jiva, of course you want things. Because why? Because you're limited. You're a very small, limited, helpless person. Therefore, you need things. But the purpose of the practice of right mindfulness is to break that and to do the work, to do that simple task. Remember they say in Zen Buddhism, they often say, before enlightenment, carrying water, chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. Same thing. Nothing's changed, but except what's changed is your attitude. Your perspective has changed. This is why a disciple went and asked the Zen master. He says, well, sir, please tell me, what time have I got? Okay. Please tell me about how to practice Zen. What is how to practice Buddhism? What is the essence of Buddhism? What do? You are a great Zen master. Tell me, what is your practice so I can imitate it? And the Zen master says, well, when I'm hungry, I eat, and when I'm tired, I sleep. And the disciple looks at, what kind of a teaching is that? So that's not a practice. That's no training. So everybody does that. And then after that, then begins the long explanation, right, of what that means. But the Zen master, yes, when he eats like everybody else. You see, but when we eat, what do? Well, we got the television on, we got the radio on, we're talking to our friends, we're looking around the table, our mind is on everything except our eating. So the Zen master, that was his teaching of the working without attachment, without desire, and we can Swami Ramtirtha, disciple of Swami Vedarupananda, he often, several occasions there, he told about the pond. There was a pond and a river. The pond and the river. Now we're talking here about working without attachment, without desire for the fruits of the action. See, the secret here is to give up your desire for the fruits of the action and to make the ends and the means into one. A pond and a mighty river were having an argument. And the pond says to the river, he said, you, all day long, I see this water, vast amounts of water flowing on and on, goes down into the ocean. And the ocean of water, you're putting water and water down into the ocean, and you're carrying with it all the treasures of the gold and all the minerals and everything of your water. It's all being carried down into the ocean. So what a waste. All this time you spend, day and night, you flow and rush down towards the sea. It doesn't need your water. It doesn't need any more water. The ocean has enough water. It doesn't need all your treasures. The ocean has its own. And then the river says, well, yeah, it's true. what you say is true. The ocean doesn't need the water. The ocean doesn't need all of these treasures. But I don't flow because of the ocean. I don't care about the ocean. I never think about it. I flow with the mighty power, with the joy and the happiness of flow. That's what I do. I'm a river. That's my dharma. And in fact, I see where do I get my energy? Well, I don't know. I mean, just flow. Maybe the water in the ocean evaporates and goes up through the sky, and somehow, the great life cycle comes down, rains on the mountains, and a river comes down the fountainhead. Fresh gurgling water there is appearing constantly at the source of the river, replenishing the fresh water. And so the fresh, mighty river continues to flow. So that's what I do. And so the river continued to flow from the great fountainhead. Meanwhile, that little pond, very miserly, kind of small little pond, grows stagnant, and gradually dried up. And that was the end of it. So let's work with it. That's the work. Let me conclude by giving you an example of a person who actually did this, And this is if you read in the 8th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, you can read in some detail about it's good. The title of the chapter is The Ideal of Karma Yoga. Who is the ideal? Lord Buddha. Now, the Buddha was all of the teachers of the world, all of the great teachers of the world, the incarnations, the prophets, all of those great teachers relied for their inspiration and their foundation on something greater than themselves. Some of those saints and prophets, for example, spoke about God and about the glories of God and God's commandments and seeing God in everything and working with the inspiration of God and being unselfish because you are a child of God and because you want to please and love God. And this was their great spiritual motivation, but Buddha didn't believe in God. He repudiated the very idea that underlies the popular ideas of God. These are the words of Swami Vedarupananda. You can read that volume, Karma Yoga. So then you say, well, how did he get his inspiration? Where was his motive? What was his motive? It wasn't God. Now, there are many other prophets who speak high philosophy. And they talk about great high metaphysical truths about the soul and about the universal spirit, about the Atman, about Brahman, about worshiping of the spirit by the spirit. All of these high Vedantic ideals. But Buddha wasn't a Vedantist. In fact, he rejected the Vedas, and with it the Brahman, Atman, everything with it. So his inspiration didn't come from high philosophy. It didn't come from metaphysics. It didn't come from the soul. He didn't believe in the soul. So then, and yet, he was willing to give up his very life 500 times, sacrificed his life for men and animals. So he's like a perfect moral man. And so we have to think about how is that possible. Swami Vivekananda says, there is no work without motive. The goal is to get to higher and higher motives, right? That's our whole progression. Higher and higher motives. Now, the highest motive that maybe we can think in Buddhism, the highest motive well, it depends on the school of Buddhism. The highest motive in the Theravada school is the arhat. That's to attain liberation. That's to attain mukti. That's to attain freedom. But Buddha kind of went, at least in the Mahayana tradition, he carried it one step further, so we're told. That is his ideal was he had a motive that even transcended spiritual freedom, and that was to work for not only just his own spiritual freedom, but the spiritual freedom of all men, and not just all men, but all sentient beings. And so that's like the highest conceivable motive, spiritual motive for work, and thus he stands as the highest ideal of karma yoga. Om Dyo Shantihi Antariksha Shantihi Prithivi Shantihi Apa Shantihi Oshadaya Shantihi Vanaspataya Shantihi Vishwe Deva Shantihi Brahma Shantihi Saravam Shantihi Shantireva Shantihi Same Shantirehi Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om. Peace is in heaven, peace is on the earth, peace is in the sky and in the waters. The herbs and plants and trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. May this eternal universal peace enter our souls and beings. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.